Hey, this is Adrian with Chalk Talk. Today we got a special guest, Mark Bell. Came down to Super Training to get a
Very
bench
special.
session. Very special. Came down here to get a quick session in and learn a little bit. If you haven't been paying attention to Mark and his benching recently, he's just been killing it. Last week, I think he hit 555 for a double.
I did 530 for a triple a few weeks ago, and then 525 or 555 for a double, and then kind of banged up my elbow a little bit, so I had to take a few steps back, and then recently hit a 545. But all those numbers are pretty good, but then this guy comes in and acts like a total jerk and benches 565 right in my face, which wasn't very nice. And then went on to bench 635 in the SlingShot, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that might be a PR for me. I don't think I've ever gone over 605 in a SlingShot.
Nice work.
Felt heavy, super heavy.
Time to get that record back, buddy.
Yeah. So one of the things that I tried doing the other day is going onto your YouTube page. I wanted to find the very first Mark Bell YouTube video you posted up. I thought maybe it'd be something super stupid. I knew you'd be really fat and probably benching in a bench press shirt.
Cheating.
Yeah, but after
you
about
did it too.
Yeah, I did. When I was fat too. I kept hitting load more and load more. I couldn't get to the bottom of it. I probably spent 20 minutes trying to get to the bottom, and I didn't. So, do you remember what your first YouTube video is?
It would be really hard to say because before YouTube, I did Put File, which some of you may know, some of you old schoolers might know. And I was doing stuff on EliteFTS.com, doing videos, probably pretty much, in my opinion, well before anybody else in this space, in the strength world, was doing anything. And then also I did a lot of stuff with Jim McD. So like it's kind of hard to say, what videos. But Jim and I did a video. We did a squat bench deadlift series called Never Enough. It's really, really super old DVD that we used to sell. And so like those are kind of my first, some of my first videos that we put together. Wow. And yeah, I've been trying to truck along. Basically, my channel is called Super Training 06, and it's basically been going on since about 2006. And I don't really know why I started the videos, because to be honest, at the time I was definitely no expert, but I kind of felt that I was, so I started talking. And I think if I was to try to come on the scene now and kind of talk the way that I did then, I think I would probably get smashed on YouTube, especially because not that I was arrogant really, but I really felt like I knew what I was talking about, and I only was getting to the beginning of knowing what I was talking about, and I kind of recognize that a little bit more now, and so that's why in my videos I always try to back everything I'm up by saying like, this is what I do, or this is the way I do this. And that way no one can say, oh, but if bodybuilder would do it this way, or Olympic lifter. I would say, no, this is the way I like to do it. This is the way I've had my team do it. This is the way I've recommended it for other people, and this has worked well for us, or for them, or for myself.
That's interesting, because I remember watching some of the Power Project videos you put together. And with those, like that's what you'd always say is, hey, I'm not the strongest guy in the world. I'm not
Power Project.
The best, yeah, I'm not the best bencher or whatever, but this is what I do, and this is what works for me. Like, you don't really try to sell it as this is the only way to do it. You're just saying what has worked for you.
Oh yeah, there's so many different ways to do it. You got a guy like Alan Beria, who's bench pressed 633 pounds in competition. The guy is jacked. The guy's huge. He looks awesome, and he's a great bencher. Somebody I've known for years now. And then you also have Eric Spoto. Those are two guys that have bench press and built their bench press up a very similar way. But then there's also guys who've done West Side. Look at Matt Wenning, has benched over 600 pounds doing West Side. Stan Efferding is somebody I worked closely with. When I met him, he did about 550 and ended up doing a 606 bench, using a lot of the principles of West Side barbell. But a lot of guys do straight up bodybuilding and end up building a big bench press. And really the truth of it is what I've learned is that most guys that have a big bench, a big squat, or a big deadlift, or a combination of all three, what they all do? They all go in common? They all overtrain, quote unquote overtrain. Like guys that have a 500 pound, 600 pound bench, no surprise, no shock, they have a huge chest, they got huge arms, and those are the guys that are bench pressing for hours on end in the gym.
That's crazy. Talking about overtraining, I talked to Jeremy Hornstra about kind of his normal training day, And
what a mutant!
I mean, that stuff, like, he does more in one training session than I do in a whole week. I can't believe the amount of volume and stuff that he does just in one training session.
That guy is so strong.
Yeah.
But you know, what people don't realize is if you were to think of, you know, a sink as being, or if you're thinking about a sink and then you're thinking about a drain, and that drain is your means to recovery, and the water that you put inside that sink is your like workload. People don't really realize that you can not only continue to add more water to that sink, but at some point the sink might overflow, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have some real overtraining problems. Now you're going to run into injuries and all kinds of things like that. What people don't really realize is you can make that drain bigger by increasing your volume, by doing more work more frequently. So some of these guys have kind of discovered that not only could they handle more in a given training session, they could also just sprinkle that over a week or 2 weeks and train the bench 3 times a week, 4 times a week. Kirill Sergeyev is a Russian lifter who's bench pressed over 700 pounds. Also deadlifts 881 pounds. So he's just a freak of all freaks. But that's a guy who follows a lot of the Shaco program, and he'll bench 3 times a week pretty often. And as he's gotten stronger, he does bench press less now, but he's built up his bench by bench pressing 3 or 4 times a week, and I see it time and time again. There's a lot of great lifters out there. Bryce Lewis comes to mind, a guy that lifts in the IPF. Mm-hmm. Jesse Norris, frequencies through the roof. Chad Wesley Smith, who's a super heavyweight. You don't usually see that from super heavyweights. Bench press 578 in competition, or 573 in competition. Also deadlifts over 800 pounds, squats over 900 pounds. Their frequency is through the roof. And I'm not saying that's the only way to train, but it gives you an idea of you could take your volume and intensity and you can spread it out over a period of time. Or you can do like the Little Bridges do, where they just smash it all in one day. They squat as heavy as possible, and then they don't squat again for 2 weeks. You know, that way is clearly working for them as well. So it gets to be confusing on what way is going to work for you, but I think what you have to find out, the most important thing, the best way to figure out which method is going to work best for you is try to figure out what's going to fit your lifestyle and your personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think training, there's so many different methods that are out there. I mean, I think it's just the best is whatever's going to work for you. You have to stick with it for a long time, obviously, to kind of feel it out. But
right.
Let's talk a little bit about when you felt that you made it in the strength game. Like, not maybe necessarily your lifting, but with your business. Mm-hmm. You're one of the few people in this world that have been able to turn, you know, basically your passion into your job.
Right.
And when did you reach that spot where you got comfortable and said, okay, I made it, I'm here now?
I'm definitely not ever comfortable, that's for sure. I'm actually more uncomfortable today than I've ever been, just because I'm always trying to push forward and always trying to do new stuff. And it's not a need for money, it's a need for being successful, it's a drive, it's a determination to just continue to get better and to make sure that nobody else can catch up with the things that I'm trying to do. But I would say there's been a few different situations that have happened. I used to get recognized for being a bigger, stronger, faster. Mm-hmm. Before that, I'd get recognized for being a power lifter, and I'd get recognized for being part of EliteFTS.com, which is Dave Tate's website, and I used to write on there as Jackass. This was a long time ago. And so I used to get recognized for those different things. I would say I was at like the Olympia or the Arnold, one of those expos, and or actually it was the Arnold Classic. And someone came up to me, an older guy, who's only been lifting for a few years, that wasn't even a competitive power lifter. He was just somebody that he hurt himself on an incline bench one time, and just his shoulder was never the same. He could never bench press again. The guy benched 365 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he just came up to me and he was like, oh my God, he's like, I can't believe I'm actually meeting you. He's like, you're an inventor. And that kind of told me, like, that's kind of different than anything anybody's ever told me before, because I did invent a product, but a lot of times people don't really recognize that side, that accomplishment, I guess you'd say. He's no longer thinking of me as a lifter. He's no longer thinking of me as somebody who's in a movie. He's just like, oh, you invented this product. Then he went on, and he's basically in tears saying like, I love this thing. This thing's allowing me to do what I've always loved to do, and I really appreciate it. And he gave me a big hug, and then he just kind of took off. But that felt like a really good compliment to me, and that kind of showed me that, you know, this guy lived in like Wyoming or something, and he came to the Arnold Classic basically just to try to come check out the booth and just to thank me for the products and stuff. And I just thought that was really cool. There's been a couple other situations. Obviously, like the orders and stuff that I see come through are pretty awesome. My wife will kill me if I give away too much information. But you know, shit just, you know, I guess basically I could say this is we used to sell stuff out of our garage, and you know, a typical day would be 10, you know, 5 or 10 items a day. And then it started to get more towards 20. And then it started to get to a point where we couldn't handle it anymore. And now we're well above 10 times that. So you do the math.
That's a good feeling.
That's how many, you know, orders are coming through all the time. And now people are just kind of getting the products from wherever. Another kind of turning point was kind of more recently was I end up in competition with my own vendors, which is really a weird thing. So that tells me that people no longer care where they get it from. They don't care if it's from Mark Bell or where it comes from. They just want the damn product. And they value the product. And obviously going through like Amazon, there's perks to that because it's a very legitimate company. They do a great job getting the product out to you fast, or bodybuilding.com, some of the other vendors. So we had to like kind of starve off our vendors on certain items, and we had to kind of keep certain colors in stock only for howmuchyoubench.net, just to figure out different ways to drive people to our website. So things like that have kind of showed me that, you know, shit's starting to get on a whole nother level, you know.
Right. Was there a time when you were coming up with a SlingShot that you didn't really know what it was going to be like? And I mean, I could just imagine you sitting in your house just brainstorming. Like, was there like other things that you were thinking about inventing at the same time, and then the SlingShot just kind of worked? Or was it kind of one day you just figured out, hey, the SlingShot is it, this is, and I'm going to run with it?
The SlingShot is, you know, something that I tore my pec several times. I always kind of say, like, no other inventor can probably say that. Mm-hmm. You know, somebody didn't invent this or that because they tore something probably, the way that I did. It was just kind of like, I was trying to think of, I was in the gym one day and I was bench pressing with a really large bench shirt on. And I was like, you know, this thing's kind of ridiculous. It's like a straitjacket. But this particular bench shirt that I had, I could slide on myself very easily, and I could use it very easily in full range of motion, which, as you know, when you're in a bench shirt, and those of you that don't know, when you're in a bench shirt, 50% of your max, 70% of your max, 80% of your max, and sometimes even 90% of your max. It's really hard to bring down full range of motion. So in this shirt that was probably made for somebody who weighed 450 pounds or something, I at the time weighed like 300, I could go full range of motion. I was preparing for a contest, and I just kind of sat in the gym one day. I was just by myself, and I did this often. I don't even know why, but I would just check out different material and different bench shirts and different squat suits, and I'd pull on them, I'd tug on them, and I'd check out different wrist wraps, different ones I liked. It just kind of became a thing of mine. I was just sitting there, like I'm sitting at a desk with this bench shirt on, and I'm just kind of like pulling on it, and I'm just messing with it, and I'm just sitting there in the gym by myself, and I'm just thinking, like, this thing looks weird, it's really expensive, but I hurt my pec, and I can still train by throwing this device on. How do I get other people to have a similar feeling? How do I get people to experience this thing that's weird, this thing that doesn't look very good, this thing that's awkward and that nobody would want to throw on in a commercial gym? How do I get people to be more comfortable with a product like this? So I started to kind of think of some different ways of accomplishing that. And I'm like, this thing also costs like $200, $300 in some cases. Like, no one will pay that, so it's got to be a lot less expensive than that. And I just started playing around with a lot of different material to the point where I would just have like baskets of material, because I would buy a bunch of different products, a bunch of different wrist wraps and knee wraps, and I'd take them and I would have them sewn together by my wife's friend who sews up swimsuits. And my wife's a swimmer, so anyway, yeah, I started playing around with all these different materials. I took a pair of wrist wraps and I put them around my arms, and then I tried to connect them in the middle. And I had my dad was like holding the middle of it, and I was trying to like go like this with it. And like, just hold on to it, you know, and he's holding on to it, and the thing, poof, it snaps and hits him right in the lip. And he's like, well, that was a stupid idea. He's like, that didn't work. He's like, that just hurt. That just hit me in the face, you know. I was like, no, but I think that's the right way to do it, because your elbows are really what move in a bench press. If you think about it, there's not really a whole lot of movement from anywhere else, and whenever you spot anybody in a bench press, you're spotting them, you know, mainly from the elbows and from the triceps and stuff like that. And so as I got to kind of think of the design a little bit more, I took some basically knee wraps, had my wife's friend sew them up. I met her at a Starbucks, and within a few hundred feet of that Starbucks, there was like a Fitness 19 right there, just a small gym. And I said, stay right here. And I said, I'm going to come back. And so I tried on this first version of the SlingShot, and I went in there and I benched 135 for like 20 or 30 reps, and it felt really good. The weight was just jumping off my chest. I had no pain in my shoulders or my pec that I just recently tore. And I just got up off the bench, and I just got goosebumps all over my whole body. I'm like, this is fucking it. This is what I've been thinking about for the last several months. Probably took me about 5 or 6 months to come up with the design of it. And I went back to my wife's friend, and I said, I need to make like 20 of these, you know. They got to test them out in the gym and make sure it's something that's going to actually work. And then from there, it was like, you know, all right, how do I actually, I got this idea, I got this product, how do I find a manufacturer, and how do I, you know, and so that took a long time. There was a lot of back and forth, and I made a few really horrible versions of the SlingShot, and those didn't work. They weren't the right material, they weren't strong enough, and so on, and then just stumbled upon the right manufacturer and was off to the races from there.
When did you come up with the name of SlingShot?
It was right away. It was
right away.
Yeah,
you
right
just
away.
Figured it out right away.
Yeah, I just kind of thought about like, what does this thing actually do? And I just kind of thought, well, it kind of, you know, propels you out of the bottom. And then I also thought, like, you know, as silly as it might sound, is you can kind of like put a rock in there and you could you could launch it. You know? So I kind of thought of SlingShot pretty much right away. I wish I had some papers, because I used to write down a bunch of different names for it. I have no idea what the other names would be. Probably the stupid names some of the other people out there have used, and I tried to copy it.
Goddamn copycats.
They're everywhere. What are you gonna do?
Yeah. You know, what's funny is one of the things I did with the SlingShot, you probably don't remember this, but I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, you asked to shoot some videos of some funny shit that you could do with the SlingShot.
Oh, yeah.
And so I actually believe my daughter was sitting in a chair in the gym, and I wrapped it around her, had her put her arms in it, and then I used wrist wraps and basically got her stuck in a chair. And it was like the babysitter while I was in the gym.
That's great.
Yeah. So it's a multi-purpose.
Just kinda, yeah, we've had people do all kinds of stuff off of it, eat off of it. I had somebody who was like launching M&Ms off it and catching them in their mouth. One of the best ones though was somebody made they took a Haagen-Dazs, like a pint of ice cream, and I thought this was brilliant. I'd never seen anybody do this before. The guy takes the pint of ice cream, pops the lid off, throws it in the microwave for like, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, and he's like, this is the way I make milkshakes. And so he just let it like melt basically in the microwave, and then he took it out of there and he put it on top of the SlingShot, and he like tilted it back and he drank it. He got it all over himself and all over his SlingShot and everything. But yeah, we have fun with it. You know, it's important to have fun with it too, and that's always been part of the advertising of it. Is like not just to say, hey, go buy a SlingShot. We try to make fun of it. We try to have fun with it. We try to show people that if you're lifting more weight than normal, and you're able to do more reps, and it's not painful anymore, that it can be fun.
Yeah.
You know, it is kind of fun to take 225, which, you know, for someone your strength level might be able to do for 40 or 50 reps. Well, now you can do it for like 70. It's kind of silly. You're down there going like this, or you bang out push-ups with it. You can just drill them really fast, and it feels good.
Yeah. Is there ever a time, I know Andy's super supportive with everything you do, is there ever a time where she looked at you and said, enough, this is not a good idea, or maybe it was trying to give you advice, maybe push you in a different direction?
Yeah, certainly. I've been married to my wife for like 15 years, and you know, the SlingShot's been around for 5 or 6 years, and you know, before that, I had just whatever job I could pick up. I was a bouncer, you know, I did all kinds of different things just to try to pick up some money here and there. And, you know, I personal trainer for a long time. And then I had Super Training Gym for a while, and Super Training wasn't always free. When I was a bum, I had to charge. I had to charge. And like I said, I did a little bit of personal training and stuff. But yeah, I just wasn't really making much money. She was doing okay with her job. Fortunately for me, she kind of, years ago, got really frustrated with a radio job that she had where she was selling basically airtime. She was selling ads, selling advertising. And I'm super laid back and super calm, and so we just have totally different personalities. And she's, you know, just gung-ho all the time. She wants to, like, you know, go, 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 and do stuff fast. And she just got so burnt out with that job. She'd come home crying. She'd come home upset. She'd come home stressed out. I said, go in there tomorrow and just quit. Mm-hmm. She's like, I can't. She's like, I can't. What? She's like, you don't make any money, you know. I can't just go. I was like, you're smart. You're brilliant. You can work anywhere.
You work for power.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you think you're attached to that job? You're attached. So anyway, long story short, she got into working for she quit that job, worked for a company called Fitness Management Magazine, where she learned the magazine business and magazine industry, and she sold ads there. And then later, that company actually just folded. And I was looking at Powerlifting USA one day, and I just said, you know, this magazine's not that great. I was like, it doesn't focus in on the best of the best. I was like, we should make our own magazine, because I think people used to be happy with Powerlifting USA because they'd see their little name in there.
Yeah.
That's cool, but that's not the way the other magazines are. It's not the way the bodybuilding magazines are. It's only the cream of the crop. There's Arnold, and there's a bunch of other dudes that have won championships, people that have a real pedigree in the sport. And so I said, let's make, you know, we should, or it was her idea, I'm sorry. I was like, this thing's kind of crap. And she's like, no disrespect to Powerlifting USA, it was awesome. And I loved it, and I was inspired by it, just like everybody else was. But we wanted to do something different. And so, you know, she was looking through it. She's like, we should just make our own. I was like, oh shit, can we actually do that? But, you know, she's always been kind of the brains of the operation. She's always been the one making the dough. And yeah, there was a point where she was just like, you know what, maybe I had a couple buddies that worked at the airport, and I traveled a bunch and stuff for meets and things like that. So she was like, maybe you should just get a job at the airport, because then you could get, you know, free plane tickets and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, you know, if I have to, you know, I'm thinking
gotta get the job,
back in my head, like, fuck no, there's no way I'm actually getting a real job. That's terrifying. And she always kind of hung in there. She was always supportive. But for some reason, you know, I don't know, maybe I'm just a big dreamer. I don't know what it is. But I kind of always envisioned a lot of these steps happening. They almost have already happened in my head. It's weird to even say it out loud because it sounds like a psychopath, but they kind of have. And the SlingShot is not even halfway to where it can get to. So there's still a lot more to come. There's still a lot more to go with it. But yeah, it's been great that she's had faith in me, that she's kind of hung in there all this time, because, you know, I think not that any spouse or whatever is going to be, you know, so money hungry, but shit, man, you got to figure out a way to make things work, right?
Yeah, you got kids and a mortgage.
Yeah,
and
especially when you have kids, it's like you got to figure out a way. You know, I literally didn't have hardly any income at all, so you got to figure out a way to at least generate some, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think you did now, right? Yeah. You're making up for it.
Making up for lost times, yeah.
It's interesting. We talked about the Power magazine. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was the year that you first started with Power. You came and did a competition in Gresham, Oregon, and I talked to you there, and you had said, yeah, you know, I'm just starting this new magazine, and this is what I'm going to do. And I mean, it was like, it had to have been the first couple of magazines that have came out for you. And it was like, at first I was thinking like, man, that's, I don't know, you have Powerlifting USA, which is out there, and it's huge. And I mean, you completely took over. Yeah. Did you think back, maybe when it first started, that it would be as big as it is? Did you feel like it had that potential?
You know, I think, I tell people this all the time with their training, being naive is great. It's like, it really is. Like, when you're naive and you're new to training, you'll try all different kinds of new things, and you won't even think about the consequences of it. Yeah. And I think that starting this magazine was a little bit like that. I mean, luckily, my wife had experience doing that already. I didn't think by any means that Powerlifting USA would fold up and not be around anymore. I didn't think that would happen at all. You know,
It's gotta be a good feeling.
yeah, I mean, it's a good feeling to be able to still have a magazine for powerlifting, and to be able to stand around and still be able to stick it out, because it's not easy. It's very difficult. But PL USA, some people are like, oh, what happened to it? Or nothing happened to it. It's around for over 30 years. So how long can you really run that kind of business?
Yeah.
The guy that was running it, I mean, he did everything. He did the photos for it. He'd write a lot of the articles for it. I mean, that guy busted his ass for that.
That's
magazine.
a ton of work.
It's a ton of work, and hats off to him for picking up that torch, because otherwise there wouldn't have been a magazine at all, and there wouldn't be a Power magazine at all either. So, I didn't really envision Power magazine like blowing up to be some great big thing, but I still think there's still a lot more room for Power magazine to grow. It's just like with so much other stuff going on, like the Powercast, all the stuff going on in here in the gym, my own training, my kids, my wife and I are split between so many different things all the time, that the magazine is like, oh yeah, we have a magazine too. We sometimes even kind of forget, and we'll get behind on it a little bit and stuff like that. But it always works out. We always are able to come together and put together great issues each and every time, but it is almost like an afterthought just because of all the other stuff going on day to day.
Just busy. Having kids alone is busy enough.
Yeah, it's just time consuming, yeah.
I'm going to kind of transition into your lifting, and kind of recently I saw you were talking a little bit about motivation and kind of just getting yourself fired up before a lift. And you could certainly see when you did 555 for a double, like you changed. It was, you're super happy all the time.
Right,
you always got a smile on your face. You're walking around helping people. But it looked like if somebody got in front of you in the bench, you were just going to run them over.
Yeah.
So what clicked there? Like, what makes that happen?
Yeah. First of all, I think whatever preparation somebody's doing, whether they get really quiet, or whether they smash their head on something, or whether they just like to scream before they lift, I think all you're trying to do is send a message to your body that this thing that I'm about to do is going to be super uncomfortable. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, that's all you're trying to tell yourself, even though we're these big guys, and there's some guys with tattoos and beards, and some guys look crazy looking. I think all you're trying to do is say, hey, buddy, you know what? It's going to be okay. So all the little antics and all the little things that we do, I think it's just a way to send a message to our body, like, just relax, dude. It's going to be all right. You're going to get this. It's almost like you're trying to talk yourself into making the lift. For me, it's always felt good for me to get emotion out before a lift. It's always felt right to me to get like amped up or to get fired up. I feel like if I don't do that, if I don't run myself through some of that I'm too calm, and I'm not connected enough to just going like full blast and going all out. So, those are some of the things that I think are going on for most lifters. For me, I'm able to kind of take, some negative experiences and draw upon those. It's not always the healthiest thing. My brother passed away years ago, and we have a huge quote on the wall that says, I'd rather be dead than average. And I just kind of look at that and just try to think like, my brother, he loved lifting. He was full of life. He even though he died young, he lived like 3 or 4 lives over again, because he was pretty wild. But I just try to think to myself, like, how fucking fired up would he be to be here today, to see all this stuff going on? How excited would he be for me and my family to see all these different things that are going on? And how pumped would he be to see me lifting those kind of weights, because he's the one who brought me into this mess in the first place. Yeah. So those are some of the things that kind of go through my head before I do a lift. And I just kind of think like, I'm doing this for you, because he didn't want to be average. He wanted to try to separate himself out from everybody else, but unfortunately, he had some drug addictions, he had some problems, and it was really hard for him to keep his head above water, basically.
How did your family react to him passing? You guys get closer? How was it really difficult at the beginning?
I think basically it really fucked some stuff up, in the beginning, especially because when my brother, not enough people will go and get help. Not enough people will go and get counseling. Not enough people will go, and I suggest that to everybody because I really think it could help. And we didn't do this as a family, and I think it's a mistake. I think 2 or 3 sessions, and I think, you know, some people might need more help than that, but I think it allows each person to talk. You know, you're with Courtney, and you guys might not always say exactly what's on your mind because you're scared it's going to hurt her feelings.
Sure.
And you don't want to, you're like, you know, it's late at night, you don't want to get in that argument, you don't want to get in that fight, but you're holding these things, and I do it with my wife too, everybody does it, you know, we all do it. But when somebody passes and they're no longer there anymore and you can't even hear from them anymore, it's really causes some weird dynamics. And it caused like some isolation from my brother Chris, who ended up with his own set of problems, his own drug problems, and then he couldn't communicate to anybody because he's like, well, you know, we already have, you know, we already had one pass,
Yeah.
You don't want another one, so he was like, I need to deal with this on my own, I can't, there's no way I can discuss, you know, he was hooked on pills for a little while, I think painkillers for a little while, and then he was able to get off of those, and then he got, then he ran into some alcoholism and stuff like that, and you know, he's been sober for over a year, and so, you know, I just think that it threw everybody for a loop and split everybody apart. But then when my brother came out and said he had an issue, that brought everybody together fast because we're like, this shit ain't happening again.
We need to jump on.
We're not letting this happen again, and we all try to dive in on that. But even then, it's like still constant lines of communication need to still happen because he had an addiction, but that addiction, that desire doesn't just like leave your system just because you went through some treatment. So it's like we gotta still communicate with him and check in with him and make sure, you know, not like he's a kid or anything, but he did have an issue. And like I said, he kind of mentioned that he felt lonely and felt isolated. And so it's important for all of us to kind of open up and share our feelings and not hide from them.
One of the things that Chris said is that when Mike passed, that he kind of didn't really deal with his emotions at that time. That I think, if I remember correctly, he said it was probably a year or 2 after his passing before it finally hit him, and he was just sitting by himself one day just crying.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like everything had hit him, that had happened. Was that similar with you, or was it a super emotional, I guess maybe from the beginning, maybe hearing that he had passed?
You know what? So my brother passed on a Sunday, and there's not a Sunday that doesn't go by where I don't think about it. Because I went to the gym that day. It was kind of a normal workout day, and I worked out. And then when I came home from working out is when I kind of got the news. And so for some reason, every Sunday I hop in the car, I get on the freeway, and boom, it hits me every single time. I don't always cry about it, but it hits me. And sometimes I'll think something happy, I'll think something cool that my brother did, or I'll think something, you know, or sometimes I'll get sad. You know, it just kind of depends. There's still songs and stuff that remind me of him, so sometimes I'll get emotional when I hear that kind of stuff. But you know, basically, you know, it's when somebody passes that you're close to like that. You know, he was my brother. He was my idol growing up. He's somebody that got me into lifting. He got me into football. He got me into pro wrestling. And the only thing I can do now is, you know, rather than just sit around and mope about it all day long, the only thing I do now is try to take the characteristics of him that were good and try to almost absorb them for myself. My brother was somebody who was really direct. If he did not like you, he would tell you. You know,
I don't know anybody like that.
Yeah. He was really direct, you know, just to a point, you know, where it was like a fault, you know, of his, in a way. It's like, hey man, you don't have to always tell everybody the truth, you know.
Sugarcoat it a little bit.
Yeah. And so, you know, he just didn't take shit from anybody, and he was sensitive. He'd tell you flat out. He'd tell you like, I love you, or he'd tell you that you hurt his feelings. You know, what guy does that?
Yeah.
You know, like men don't do that enough, I don't think. Just to flat out, if I told you that now, hey, when you said something, right, you would feel terrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd be like, oh my God.
Yeah,
and you just apologize for it, boom, it's gone, right? It's over with. So I try to take some of those qualities and just have them live through me and hopefully, you know, his name can kind of carry on through some of that, and then also named SlingShot after him too.
Yeah. What? How cool is it to see him wrestle on TV?
Oh, it was awesome.
Yeah.
As a kid, it was really cool. Yeah.
How old were you when you saw him wrestle on TV?
Probably from the ages of maybe like probably the ages of like 14, maybe 15 to probably 19 or so.
Yeah.
You know, he did it for a while.
That's awesome.
And he just kept getting better and better and better all the time. He kept getting in better shape. And it was to the point where it just like he started to look like a lot of the superstars he was wrestling and stuff. But like I said, he had a drug addiction and just couldn't make things work. I think that if he did make things work, that he would have died much earlier. Because I think that if he was to hit the road with those guys and to party like some of those guys, I think that would have been an even bigger disaster, and it would have happened unfolded even faster. But it was cool. It was cool to see him, you know, doing what he loved doing and doing it in front of a big crowd and a big audience. And I mean, that's something that I like getting into now, is to try to speak from big platforms and try to get on people's different podcasts and do my own podcast and elevate YouTube and push the social medias. That's what it's all about for me, is to try to just get it seen and viewed by more people.
Mm-hmm. So you've had a bunch of guests show up to Overtraining, work out, do the podcast. Coolest guest yet? And I'll take my name out of it because I know you're going to say that. So minus me, who's been kind of the coolest guy you've had here? You thought was just the most fun you've had?
Yeah, I would have to say Ed Cohn.
Yeah.
You know, Ed Cohn.
Little shorty.
Yeah. Ed Cohn. You know, once he like left, and he did a couple videos for us on how to squat, how to bench, how to deadlift type of thing. And once we were kind of done with that, and once I brought him to the airport, I was in the gym, you know, the day after he left, and I just told everybody, I was like, it's all downhill from here, man. Like, that was Ed Cohn. He's the greatest lifter of all time. Yeah. And not only is he the greatest lifter of all time, but he's an awesome person. He's super nice. He's somebody that's lived it. That's why he's able to tell you so much and give you so much wisdom, is that he's somebody that he's clearly made his own mistakes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to speak from that side of the plate, sort of thing. But he, you know, one thing he always has always told me that I've always liked is he'll say, try to basically only be good to those people that are good to you and nothing else. And I think it's the greatest quote. It sounds simple, but man, is it hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. So if you think about it, somebody says, hey, Adrian, why'd you skip leg day? And I love that you're making fun of it, because I think that's so cool. But, you know, when somebody says that, it's like, well, just be good to the people that are good to you. Be good to Courtney, be good to your family, be good to your actual friends. Who cares what some kid said on YouTube, right? Yeah. It shouldn't upset us, but it does. You know, it drives you crazy. You're like, why is this guy being disrespectful? Or even worse, somebody says something about your girlfriend, or somebody's, you know, it's like, you kidding me? Like, I can't even believe the guy said it. But it shouldn't get us riled up. We should kind of concentrate more on who is good to us, who's in our circle that's good to us, and how do I be good back to them?
Yeah.
It's a simple thing to live by.
It sounds simple. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. I remember seeing a lot of stuff right before I broke the all-time record, where people would make fun of me, and it would get challenging at times, because you would log on to Facebook and see something, go over to your YouTube channel, you'd see something, and you're getting all these notifications where people are saying shit, and it starts to wear on you a little bit. It's hard.
That's got to be a weird situation, because you've gotten it all your life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then I'm sure there's some days where you're just like, I don't care about that.
Yeah. No,
and
I
you
know.
probably laugh it off. And there's other days where you're like, man, this just sucks.
Yeah.
Why do people they really have to bring it up all the time?
Yeah. That happens all the time. And sometimes, you know, with me, it'll just switch, and we might be sitting here laughing and joking about it, and then I'll pull up my phone and be like, God damn it, right. Now I'm pissed. You know, it'll ruin the rest of my day.
Right.
Yeah.
You have really big pecs?
I do got big pecs. So as far as lifting wise, we'll get this kind of wrapped up. We have a couple of questions. As far as lifting wise, what are some of the most memorable moments for you lifting?
I would say, you know, winning the Fit Expo, the LA Fit Expo in like, I wish I could remember the year, probably 2009 or 2010. I just had a really good team around me at that point, had some really good support, and was able to beat a lot of great lifters. And it was my first my first go with single ply gear, and at that time there wasn't raw lifting. I know, big shop, there was no raw lifting around. There wasn't even a category for it, believe it or not. It wasn't even that long ago. But there was huge debate over whether multi-ply lifters could go into a single ply meet and do any damage and do anything. And I was able to go into that meet, and I can't even remember some of the numbers now, but I was able to go into that meet and win and beat some awesome lifters, put together a pretty good total. And I just remember, like, you know, going through the benches, and I finished my last bench. I finished my third attempt bench, and I was walking to the back, and my third attempt bench was a good 200 pounds more than anybody else lifted at that time in single ply. And I remember Charles Bailey, who was a really good lifter, squatted over 1,100 pounds. I think he squatted close to 1,000 or 9 something in single ply gear. I just remember him shaking his head. He was in my weight class. He was like, "Meet's over." He just shook his head, and that was like the coolest feeling to me. You know, here's a guy that's super accomplished in the sport, very, very strong guy, totaled over 2,500 pounds multiple times, and he just saw that, and he was like, "Oh, man, we're done, we're all toast." So that was really cool. And then the most, well, and that one was also in the face of my brother dying. My brother died just, you know, a month or two before that. He died like during the, as soon as I started the training cycle, I actually remember talking to him, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to do this meet." And then he like passed like the next day, and then I took like a week off of training. It was like, it's not great for me to go in the gym. I can't think straight. And I gave it about a week, and then my friend said, "Hey man, you could get your butt back in the gym," and which I agreed. I was like, that's the right thing to do, is, you know, focusing on something different and focusing on what I love to do. And I came in the gym, I was lifting like crazy. I was really strong that day. I was doing a rack pull, partial range of motion deadlift, and boom, blew out my bicep. And I was like, man, I was just going to dedicate this meet to my brother, and now I tore my bicep. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I trained. I was like, okay, my arm black and blue from fingertips all the way down my side, all the way into my chest and everything. And I was like, okay, I can still squat. My arms, you know, out super wide. I could still bench. I don't know how that worked out, but I was still able to bench. I had to take like a week or two off completely, but I was still able to kind of get back in the game. Couldn't deadlift at all. And I was like, I'm just going to go to the meet, and I'm going to squat really heavy, and I'm going to bench really heavy. And then when it comes to the deadlift, I'm going to make something up at the end, and hopefully I can deadlift enough to beat everybody. And that's the exact way that it worked out. And I remember just getting myself super emotional for like that last deadlift. I was like, if I make this deadlift, then the meet's over. Then no one will be able to catch me. And you know, I thought about my brother, and I thought about my family and stuff, and I went out there and I nailed the lift, and I was just like, you could just see it on my face. I was just completely shot after that. I was completely just, you know, just drained after that. So that was awesome. And then also the meet that I did, that's in Bigger, Stronger, Faster, where I benched the 705. That meet I actually went 9 for 9 and had fun with the old lady afterwards, so I actually went 10 for 10.
Was that in New York?
That was in Vegas.
Okay. All right, that was like a world. World championship.
Yeah. And that was at a time when multiply was super popular. So like I did the best I possibly could. I hit PRs all around. I did 854 squat, a 705 bench, and like a 722 deadlift or something. And I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt awesome. I finished in 8th place. I finished like dead center. There were 16 people in the 275 class, and I got whooped up on. It was a national meet, I think.
Okay.
But there was just so many strong lifters at that time, like Chuck Vogapool and Greg Panora and a bunch of other dudes, and I just got smashed. But I was so happy, I didn't even care.
You had a mohawk then, right?
Yeah, purple mohawk.
Yeah.
And I didn't matter to me. I was excited. I think I may have outbenched everybody at that meet, except for maybe like one other lifter or something. I was pretty pumped about that. I was like, okay, well at least I got this one thing that's good. You know, so that felt really good.
Back then, a 700-pound shirted bench was huge.
Yeah, and then
you don't see that very often.
And then it just went crazy. I don't know what happened after that.
Yeah. I'm gonna get to these questions here. We got some Facebookers that, for whatever reason, want to ask you questions.
Stupid. When are you gonna get back on the platform?
I think December. I was gonna try to do Jesse's meet, but it's already filled up. So I think December I'm gonna hit a meet and then shoot for.
He has one in March.
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot for the March one.
Yeah.
That'll be the 220 where I'll break the all-time world record. I gotta
600-pound
outbench you, so if you're gonna do 606, I'm gonna do like 608.
What is the record now for 220? Is it 590?
592, I believe.
That guy hit it pretty smooth too, right?
And it looks good. It looks super good. You know what I mean? Like you can be pissed off at somebody.
Guy?
Yeah, I can't even say his name. I can't even say his name.
Russian guy.
Yeah.
Can we whoop his ass?
I think we can whoop his ass.
Time up with a gangster rap, some slingshot.
Yeah.
Throw him in a trunk somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, the crazy thing with his lift is that everything is legit. You know, you'd almost feel.
He unracks it, he holds it,
yeah,
he
holds
down,
it.
pauses
A
it.
very legit pause, legit lockout, really good speed.
You want to hate him, but
Yeah, I can't. I think I tried a friend request him on Facebook and he declined it.
of course he did.
Yeah, what the hell?
He's one you learn.
Skip the leg day. So we got here, I have all the different types of slingshots, and what way could I maximize the benefit of using them to help my raw bench?
Damn, use all of them. I like that.
Maybe all of them at once?
Yeah. Throw them on top of each other. Usually the way that I use the reactive slingshot is usually for speed work and for reps. The full bore and the original are so similar that they're interchangeable. Doesn't matter too much on how you use those, but those are for overload. And the way that I like to teach people to use those is or to use any of the slingshots is really after you've done your main work. You know, it's important to point out the fact that yes, it is a product that I sell and stuff like that, but you still have to get in your own lifting for the day by yourself without the slingshot, unless you're hurt. If you're hurt, then you can wear it for the full workout. But I always just suggest people wear it for the last 3 or 4 sets, as you did today. You benched 565 for 2 singles, and then you threw the slingshot on, hit 585, 605, and then 635. So there's 3 extra sets. You can also simply take your max, for you for today, you did 565, and you could do 565 for a few doubles or a few triples after you finished your raw work. It's important that you get some of that raw lifting in. And then the Mad Dog would just be for an extreme overload or for really, really high reps. I know some lifters, Tiny Meeker is one of them, he'll do ultra high reps, sets of 30, sets of 50, with even some of his like kind of more novice lifters, and they've had a lot of success by benching like that in the Mad Dog.
Yeah.
And for myself, when I use the Mad Dog, it's usually just, it's usually after I already went heavy raw, and it's just like, you know what, I don't want to chance anything hurting at all. I want the security and the stability of the Mad Dog, so I'll throw it on. And normally with any of the slingshots I use, I almost always do at least a double or a triple, and I always pause all the weights for a good second or two on the chest.
Make it as hard as possible.
Yeah, because it's giving you so much help.
What I noticed a huge jump in my training is when I would pick a goal for my next competition, and that kind of goal weight, I would never go above that in a slingshot, and I'd always just try to work on my reps and paused reps in the slingshot at that weight,
right?
And just trying to get super comfortable with it. I remember I got to a spot where, you know, I was 4 or 5 repping 585, and they were all paused in the slingshot before I broke the record, but I felt super comfortable feeling that.
Yeah, what's great about that is you're going to go through a sticking point over and over and over again. So when you do 5 repetitions, maybe rep 1 and rep 2 are probably smooth enough and fast enough to where it's not an issue. And if you bounce them with the slingshot on, you're not going to really be driving through the sticking point properly. You're going to be coasting through it. Yeah. And that's why you want to make sure you pause. But you'll have, with 585 for 5, you'll probably have 3 reps where you got to go, you know, you got to pump through each one of those, and then you're also doing it safely because it's catching you down at the bottom where your shoulders are the most vulnerable.
Yeah. So I'll ask the same question. This person asked me the same question. Now I want to ask you, who does Mark learn from? Who has been the most influential or the best source of information, maybe presently or in the past?
I learn from everybody, and I find motivation and inspiration from everywhere. It is literally everywhere. If you open up your eyes, there's motivation to be found all over the place. Even like my dad, who appears to be an average person, you know, he's somebody that, you know, had a 9-to-5 job, got up, busted his ass every single day for 30 years, you know, just to give his family security. You know, and then as I've gotten older and as I've had my own kids, there's stuff that he's told me I didn't even know about. Like, he would like save up sick days and then go do like these, just these cool things with me that I didn't even really realize that he was taking a sick day off of work for, you know, stuff like that I didn't really know. But like, there's inspiration, there's stuff to be learned from all over the place. We have a lifter in here right now. His name is Bryce. He had his, basically he got into a motorcycle accident and ended up just having surgery after surgery on his leg. And now the guy, you know, he got the leg amputated all the way up above the hip. And you know, he just came in here one day and didn't mention anything about any of that. He just came in and said, I want to get stronger. And I was like, cool. He just started working in with the team, started joking with the team. People started joking with him, and he started to integrate himself in. And here's this guy who's on crutches. He's got to try to manage the crutches, and it's one thing for him to lay down on the bench. It's actually probably almost the easiest thing I've seen him do, is to lay down on the bench and bench press, and he's pretty damn strong. He's managing these crutches, and then he's trying to like pull a weight off the bar, and then he's trying to put the weight, and you go over there and try to help him, he's like, no, I got it. Yeah. You know, no, I got it. You know, to me, that's motivating, that's inspiring. There's a guy not using any excuses. He's just in there, he's integrating himself with everybody, even though he clearly went through some tough times. He's just blasting right through it, you know. So, and in terms of learning from people, I learn from all kinds of different lifters, the lifters that I bring here for the podcast, Ed Cohn, Stan Efferding, Eric Spoto, yourself, all different kinds of lifters from all over the country and all over the world.
Yeah. The one thing about Bryce that really is surprising for me is seeing somebody who has to use crutches to get around and how much effort that is.
Yeah.
And then to still want to work out. Like, the last thing I'd want to do after being on crutches
use his arms
is actually, then use your arms again to work out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's a tough dude.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Last question. Would Mark compete in strongman?
No.
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 That was pretty quick.
Yeah, no, strongman, you know, people talk about bodybuilding or strongman, or people that don't know anything they'll say, oh, you'd be awesome in like UFC or something. It's like, no, I wouldn't be awesome in that. Like, that's not what I do. I built up some strength, and yes, I'm stronger than the average person, but you know, there's a lot of technique involved in being a UFC fighter for sure. Those are professional fighters. It's like a whole other level. And then also when it comes to strongman, powerlifting is not as directly related to it as you would think. They are not all that related. I would say it'd be easier for a strongman competitor to jump into powerlifting than it would be for a powerlifter to jump into strongman. Normally the strongman athletes are the ones that are good at it, are coming in with, if they're coming into powerlifting, they have plenty of athleticism and plenty of conditioning and stuff for powerlifting, whereas a powerlifter most likely might not have the athleticism, the grip strength.
Yeah.
You know, the grip strength is a huge part of it. So I would just get my ass kicked really bad in strongman. It would be ugly. Yeah. And the same thing with bodybuilding. I have a lot of respect for bodybuilding, and I just think if I was to get all sucked up and try to be as lean as possible, that although I might look good for a photo shoot, I'd look terrible on stage, because those guys, they have to kind of get themselves to such a low body fat percentage and such a low weight that I would be down to like 220 pounds or something, or maybe lighter. I don't even know.
That'd be crazy.
It'd be awful.
It'd be crazy to see a 220.
It'd be terrible.
That would not be good.
It'd be terrible. I mean, that's the thing with it is, you know, you see some of these guys on stage at like 240 pounds and stuff, and it's nothing to sneeze at, but people just hear it all the time, so they become desensitized to it. But that shit's really hard. Yeah. The dieting for it, the discipline for it, I don't have any of that. I don't pretend to have any of that. I'm not even try it.
You like Reese's too much.
Oh, yeah, peanut butter cups.
I should have brought some of those over the other night.
A weak spot.
I know. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for having us come down here again and train. And I'm really glad that you skipped benching today, because I was worried you were going to whoop my ass. So I'm glad this all worked out.
Maybe I'll catch it at some point, but not quite yet.
I think the other day, the 555, I think you would have made me look like
kick you in the kneecaps.
Like a joke. Yeah.
I'd beat you.
We got to start benching with your feet out, so you're gonna stop cheating.
Yeah, that looks like cheating while you're benching.
It might be.
Fat little feet.
Yeah.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.